nuisance the world can do without." Eddie wanted to ask more about leprechauns, but the bell rang to start school, and the rest of the class filed in the door. Eddie couldn't help wondering why Mrs. Jeepers didn't like leprechauns. Chapter 2. Eddie Cuts Loose. Eddie slammed his math book shut and looked around the third-grade classroom. Kids were bending over their books like they were performing heart surgery. He'd been working hard all morning, too. As a matter of fact, he'd been working hard ever since Mrs. Jeepers came to Bailey Elementary. Eddie scratched his curly red hair and watched the second hand of the clock sweep around. He tapped his pencil as each second passed. "Shh," Howie hissed. Eddie stuck out his tongue at the freckled face of his best friend, but he did stop tapping his pencil when Mrs. Jeepers flashed her eyes in his direction. Eddie felt around inside his desk for something to do. He dug through wrinkled scraps of paper stuck to old bubblegum wads, pencils without erasers, a pile of dried glue, broken crayons, dried-up markers, old test papers with Fs, Howie's missing baseball card, and a pair of scissors. Eddie hooked his fingers into the scissors. He snipped a few of the Fs off his old test papers and stuck them to a wad of bubble gum. It was then that he noticed how one long strand of Liza's hair had fallen out of her ponytail. The long clump was dangling right on Eddie's desk. Eddie glanced up at Mrs. Jeepers. Luckily, she was busy helping Carrie. He grinned wickedly and inched the scissors across his desk. Very slowly, he surrounded the hair with the sharp metal scissors. One snip and the deed would be done. Eddie squeezed like he was pulling the trigger of a gun, but something was wrong. The scissors wouldn't close. Eddie squeezed harder, but it was like they were frozen. It was then that he saw a green flash in the front of the room. Eddie gulped as Mrs. Jeepers rubbed the green brooch at her neck and smiled her odd little half-smile. Caught again, Eddie thought to himself as he put away his scissors. He never could have any fun in Mrs. Jeepers' room. But it was almost time for gym. Gym was the one time he could really cut loose. All that basketball dribbling must have turned Coach Ellison's brains to mashed potatoes because he never knew what was going on. Finally, Mrs. Jeepers stood up from her desk. "It is time for physical education," she said in her strange Romanian accent. "Please line up." Every time Mrs. Jeepers spoke, Eddie got goosebumps. Her accent reminded him of a Dracula movie he'd seen. Eddie joined the rest of the class in line. As soon as his teacher turned away, he pinched Liza's chubby arm. "Ow!" Liza screeched. She slapped her hand over her mouth just as Mrs. Jeepers turned around. "Is there something the matter?" Mrs. Jeepers asked Liza. No, ma'am," Liza stuttered. Eddie snickered as they walked down the hall. "Scaredy cat," he whispered to Liza. Liza did her best to ignore Eddie. Everybody did their best to ignore him, but Eddie was itching for some excitement. By the time the class had reached the bathrooms, he had managed to pinch 3 people, trip 2, and kick another. But that wasn't enough for Eddie. Unfortunately for Howie, the girls' bathroom door was propped open. Eddie acted fast before he missed his chance. He grabbed Howie and pushed him into the girls' bathroom. The girls giggled as Howie stumbled out. "What's wrong with you?" Howie whispered. "Are you trying to get in trouble?" "No," Eddie admitted slyly. "I just want to have a little St. Patrick's Day fun." "You'd better watch out, or Mrs. Jeepers will turn you into bat bait," Howie warned. "Then you'll be sorry." Eddie's face grew pale. One time he made Mrs. Jeepers so mad she dragged him out into the hall. The way her green eyes flashed and the warning she hissed had made the blood drain from his face. He never admitted to anyone what had happened in the hall, but the thought of it was enough to keep him quiet. At least until he got to gym. Chapter 3. Mr. Potato Head. In the gym, a very short man wearing a red sweatsuit and green high-top tennis shoes stood beside their gym teacher.